On the 3rd of April, 1895, the most celebrated man in the British Empire walked into the Old Bailey to win. His name was Oscar Wilde. He was the wittiest man alive. His plays were the toast of London, 2 of them running in the West End that very week. He had come to court not as a defendant, but as an accuser to destroy an enemy with a few perfect sentences. He was so certain of victory that he treated the witness box like a stage. What happened over the next 25 days? In 3 trials, across this one building, is the most spectacular fall in the history of celebrity. A king at breakfast, a convict by the season's end, and the blade that did it was a single quiet question about a kiss. This is the trial of Oscar Wilde. To understand the fall, you have to understand how high he stood. In the spring of 1895, Oscar Wilde was not merely famous. He was the most quoted, most photographed, most imitated man in London. He had 2 plays running at once, An Ideal Husband and The Importance of Being Earnest. Audiences laughed until they ached. Critics called him the cleverest man in England. He dined where he pleased, he said what he liked. And what he liked to say was that he had nothing to declare but his genius. But Wilde had a private life that the law of England would have hanged a generation earlier. And still, in 1895, could send a man to prison with hard labor. He was in love recklessly, openly, with a beautiful, ruinous young aristocrat named Lord Alfred Douglas. His friends called him Bosie, and Bosie came with a father, the Marquis of Queensberry, a violent, half-mad Scottish aristocrat, famous chiefly for writing the rules of modern boxing. He hated Wilde. He hated what his son had become, and he had decided to break the most famous man in England with his bare hands. On the 28th of February, 1895, Queensberry walked into Wilde's club, the Albemarle, and left a calling card with the porter. On it, in his own furious hand, he had scrawled 4 words. That would end an empire of a career. The card read, "For Oscar Wilde, posing Somdomite." He had even misspelled it. Here is the hinge of the entire tragedy. Wilde could have ignored the card. He could have torn it up. The porter had folded it. No one but Wilde had read it. His wisest friends begged him, leave England, go to Paris, let it die. Instead, Wilde did the proudest, most catastrophic thing of his life. He went to a magistrate and swore out a warrant for the arrest of the Marquis of Queensberry. For criminal libel, he, Oscar Wilde, would be the accuser. He would put Queensberry in the dock and humiliate him before all of London. But to win a libel case, there is one cruel rule. If Queensberry could prove that what he wrote was true, that Wilde really was what the card accused him of, then it was not libel at all. Truth is a defense, which meant Queensberry's lawyers were now legally entitled to put Oscar Wilde's entire private life on trial, and Queensberry had hired the one man in England who could do it. His name was Edward Carson, a Dublin barrister, cold, methodical, merciless, and by a twist of fate worthy of one of Wilde's own plays. Carson had known Wilde at Trinity College, Dublin. They had been students together. Now one of them would dismantle the other. In front of the world, the 3rd of April, 1895, the Old Bailey, the public gallery is jammed to the rafters. Reporters from every paper in Europe, society ladies who bribe their way in, and in the well of the court, perfectly at ease, a green carnation in his buttonhole, sits Oscar Wilde. Sir Edward Clarke, one of the great advocates of the age, rises for Wilde. He had asked his client one question before the trial. On his honor, was there any truth in the accusation at all? Wilde had looked him in the eye and lied. Clarke believed him. Clarke would carry that lie into open court. Wilde takes the stand, and for the first day, it is everything he dreamed. Carson rises to cross-examine, and Wilde toys with him. He turns every question into an epigram. The gallery laughs. The reporters scribble. Wilde is winning.
You stated that you were 39 years of age. I suggest to you that you are over 40. You were born in 1854. That makes you 40.
I have no wish to pose as being young. I am 39 or 40. You have my certificate, and that settles the matter.
The gallery chuckles. Carson does not. He simply waits and asks the next question. And the next, walking wild, sentence by polished sentence, toward the edge of a cliff that only Carson can see.
You have written, sir, that there is no such thing as a moral or an immoral book. Books are well written or badly written. That is all.
That is my view of art.
And a well-written book putting forward perverted moral views may be a good book.
No work of art ever puts forward views. Views belong to people who are not artists.
More laughter. Wilde is dazzling. He is also, though he cannot feel it yet, being measured for a noose. Because Carson has not come to argue about literature. Carson has a list. Names, hotels, dates, young men. And he is about to start reading from it. On the second day, Carson changes the subject. No more books. No more wit about art. He begins to name the young men. Grooms, valets, unemployed clerks. Boys of 16, 17, 18, far below Wilde's station, whom Wilde had taken to dinners at the Savoy. Given cigarette cases, silver-topped canes, money. Carson's strategy is exquisite and devastating. He does not accuse. He simply asks Wilde to explain why the most refined aesthete in England kept dining alone in private rooms with stable boys who could not have followed a word he said.
Did you know a young man named Walter Granger?
Yes.
He was a servant at a house in Oxford where Lord Alfred Douglas had rooms. How old was he?
He was about 16.
Was he a literary character?
Oh, no.
Was he an artist?
He was not an artist. No.
Was he educated?
Education depends on what one means.
And here, on the second day, Carson asks the one question, the quiet one, the question about a kiss. He has been building toward it for 2 days, and Wilde, drunk on his own brilliance, is about to answer it exactly the wrong way.
Did you ever kiss him?
And in that instant, for reasons no one has ever fully explained, the wittiest man alive forgets that the only safe answer is a flat, bored no. Instead, he reaches for a joke.
Oh, dear no. He was a peculiarly plain boy. He was, unfortunately, extremely ugly. I pitied him for it.
The court goes silent because Wilde has just told the world that the only reason he did not kiss the boy was that the boy was ugly, which means beauty would have been reason enough. Carson has heard it, the jury has heard it, and Carson does not let it go.
Why, sir? Did you mention that the boy was ugly?
I mentioned it because
Why did you mention his ugliness?
it is rather a vulgar question, but
Why did you mention the boy's ugliness?
you sting me and insult me and try to unnerve me. And at times one says things flippantly when one ought to speak with more sincerity. I admit it.
There, in that broken half sentence, the trial turned. For 3 days, Wilde had been the cleverest man in every room he had ever entered. Now, for the first time in his public life, he had been made to stammer. In front of the press of Europe, and once the witty man stammers, the spell is gone. Carson rises the next morning to open Queensberry's defense and tells the court that he will call the young men themselves by name, one after another, into that witness box. Wilde's lawyers understand at once what is coming. Not embarrassment, catastrophe. If those boys testify, Wilde does not merely lose the libel case, he goes to prison. Sir Edward Clarke takes Wilde aside, the man he believed, the man who lied to him, and he tells him the truth. The case cannot be won. If they let it run to a verdict, the judge will all but hand the crown. A criminal prosecution on a silver plate. Better to withdraw. Now, today,
We must stop this, Mr. Wilde. I will go before the judge and withdraw the prosecution. We will consent to a verdict that the plea of justification that the libel was true is proven, but only as to the words, posing as it is the best that can be done. The alternative does not bear speaking of.
Then it is over.
on the 5th of April, Wilde withdrew. The jury found that Queensberry's accusation was true and published for the public good. The man who had walked in to destroy the Marquess walked out, legally branded as what the card had called him, and the court sent the evidence, every name, every date, every boy, straight to the director of public prosecutions. Wilde was offered a window, a few hours, a train to Dover, the night boat to France. Half of London expected him to run. Even the authorities, it was whispered, left the door open, hoping he would. He sat in a hotel room with Bosie and a bottle of hock and seltzer, and did not move. At 10 minutes past 6 that evening, a detective knocked. Oscar Wilde was under arrest. Now, the machinery of the state turns on him directly. The libel trial was Wilde versus Queensberry. This is something far heavier. It is Regina v. Wilde, the Queen. The whole weight of England against one man. The charge, gross indecency, under Section 11 of the Criminal Law Amendment Act. The penalty, 2 years imprisonment with hard labor. The first criminal trial opens on the 26th of April. The prosecutor is Charles Gill. He calls the young men, one after another. They take the stand and describe in flat, damning detail the dinners, the rooms, the money, and then Gill rises to read aloud a poem. The poem is not Wilde's. It was written by Lord Alfred Douglas. It ends with a single line that all of England would soon be quoting. In horror, Gill turns to Wilde in the dock and asks him to explain it.
You are familiar, are you not, with the phrase, the love that dare not speak its name? What is that love?
And here, cornered, exhausted, facing prison, Oscar Wilde rose from the dock and gave the speech of his life.
The love that dare not speak its name in this century is such a great affection of an elder for a younger man, as there was between David and Jonathan, such as Plato made the very basis of his philosophy, such as you find in the sonnets of Michelangelo and Shakespeare. It is that deep spiritual affection that is as pure as it is perfect. It is beautiful. It is fine. It is the noblest form of affection. There is nothing unnatural about it. It is intellectual, and it repeatedly exists between an elder and a younger man. When the elder man has intellect and the younger man has all the joy, hope, and glamour of life before him, that it should be so. The world does not understand. The world mocks at it and sometimes puts one in the pillory for it.
And the gallery, the same gallery that had come to gloat, erupted not in jeers, in applause, spontaneous, helpless for one shining, impossible moment. The prisoner in the dock had the whole room in the palm of his hand again. It changed nothing. The first jury could not agree on a verdict. A hung jury, a flicker of hope, but the crown was not finished. The Solicitor General himself announced that Wilde would be tried again. The third trial, the second criminal trial, opens on the 20th of May. A new judge, Sir Alfred Wills, a new prosecutor, and the same parade of witnesses. Sir Edward Clarke defends Wilde without taking a fee, a quiet act of loyalty to a man who had lied to him and ruined himself. But the verdict, this time, is never truly in doubt. On the 25th of May, 1895, the jury retires. They are gone just over 2 hours. They return, the clerk rises.
Gentlemen of the jury, have you agreed upon your verdict?
The foreman stands. Wilde grips the rail of the dock. The room does not breathe.
Do you find the prisoner, Oscar Wilde, guilty or not guilty?
The foreman says one word.
Guilty.
Guilty on every count but one. And then Justice Wills turns to the most celebrated man in England. And what he says with open contempt,
Oscar Wilde, the crime of which you have been convicted is so bad that one has to put a stern restraint upon oneself to prevent oneself from describing, in language which I would rather not use, the sentiments which must rise in the breast of every man of honor who has heard the details of these two terrible trials. It is the worst case I have ever tried. I shall pass the severest sentence that the law allows. In my judgment, it is totally inadequate for such a case as this. The sentence of the court is that you be imprisoned and kept to hard labor for 2 years.
2 years hard labor for the wittiest man alive. And from somewhere in the dock, in a voice the reporters could barely hear, Wilde tried to speak.
And may I say nothing, my lord?
The judge did not answer. He simply waved his hand. Take him down from the gallery. Came hisses, and from the street outside the cheers of prostitutes who danced on the pavement. Because a gentleman had finally been brought low, Oscar Wilde was led from the dock to a cell. The fall was total, and it was fast. His name was painted out of the theater bills, while his plays still ran. His books were pulled from the shops. His house in Tite Street was seized. His possessions auctioned on the pavement. His books, his paintings, his children's toys for pennies to a jeering crowd. In prison, he was set to the treadmill and to picking oakum until his fingers bled. He was allowed one book and a slate. The man who had dined with duchesses slept on a plank in a cell that smelled of disinfectant and despair. And there, in reading Gale, he wrote, in the only hours they allowed him a pencil, the two greatest works of his ruin, a long letter to Bosie. He called De Profundis, and after his release, the Ballad of Reading Gale. When the gates opened in 1897, Oscar Wilde was a broken man, bankrupt, exiled, estranged from his wife, and forbidden to see his sons. He crossed to France under a false name and never wrote a play again. He lived 3 more years in cheap Paris hotels, borrowing money, still to the very end, the wittiest man in any room he entered. He died in 1800 in a shabby room on the Rue des Beaux Arts of meningitis at the age of 46. The legend says that as he lay dying in that hideous wallpapered room, he looked at the walls and said, my wallpaper and I are fighting a duel to the death. One or other of us has to go. The trial of Oscar Wilde is not just the story of one man's ruin. It is the story of how a single sentence, one flippant, brilliant answer about a kiss, can turn a king into a convict between breakfast and lunch. He walked into that courtroom to win with words, and words were exactly what destroyed him. If you want to come with us to other courtrooms, to the heresy trial of Galileo, to the secret morning the Knights Templar were dragged from their beds, to the dock at Nuremberg, subscribe to the highest court. Because in the end, the cleverest man who ever lived learned the oldest lesson of the law, that anything you say can and will be used against you.